Hey, welcome back. Go ahead and get comfortable. There's no rush tonight. There never is here. You don't need to keep your eyes open for any of this. The rain will do its thing, and I'll do mine. Tonight is a little different. All 32 stories are about weddings, not disasters. Nobody's wedding gets ruined tonight. These are the funny little rules families run their weddings on. The committees nobody voted for. The lists nobody can find the start of. We'll go in order, more or less, from the proposal through the planning to the big day and the quiet stuff that happens after. If you fell asleep during the parking cone story in the last video, you already know how this goes. And if you drift off tonight somewhere in the middle of the cake tasting, that's exactly right. That's what it's for. One more thing before we start, and then I'll stop talking about talking. You don't have to follow along tonight. There's no thread to lose. Every story stands on its own, so wherever you fade in or fade out, you're fine. Nothing here requires you. That's the luxury of it. All right, enough. Here we go. Our first story comes from someone whose family requires committee approval before anyone is allowed to propose. My grandmother owns one ring. It was her mother's. Small, old-fashioned, a little scratched, and worth more to this family than the house it lives in. And for as long as anyone can remember, the rule has been simple. If you want to propose with a family ring, you apply. I want to be clear that nobody wrote this rule down. There is no form. But there is absolutely a process, and everyone knows it. You go to Grandma. You sit at her kitchen table. You tell her about the person, not a speech, just talking, though everyone prepares a speech anyway. And then she thinks about it, not in front of you. That's the part that gets people. She says, "Let me sit with it," and you leave. And for about 2 weeks, the entire family knows a deliberation is underway, and absolutely nobody says a word about it out loud. She has never once said no. That's what makes the whole thing beautiful instead of terrifying. In 40 years of applications, the answer has always, eventually, been yes. But the 2 weeks still happen. Every time. My cousin asked her once, after his yes when he was safe, why the wait if the answer is always yes? And Grandma said, the wait is so you hear yourself ask. That was the whole explanation. He says he thought about it the entire drive home and then didn't sleep. The closest the committee ever came to a crisis was my sister. Her boyfriend, now husband, didn't know about the process. He bought his own ring. Proposed on a beach, on his own schedule, like a free man. The family held its breath. A proposal without an application. And Grandma, at the engagement dinner, stood up, hugged him for a long time, and put the family ring in his hand anyway. For the other hand, she said. This one's already spoken for. My sister wears both. Nobody applied. Everybody approved. The best number in this story, my mother has been quietly keeping a list of every application in the back of her address book. 11 proposals, 11 yeses. Average deliberation, 13 days. Longest, 22 for my uncle, who everyone agrees deserved the extra review. He agrees too. He brings it up at weddings proudly, like a man who passed the bar on the second try. That story ends there. One small ring, 11 kitchen table speeches, and a 2-week wait that exists only so you can hear yourself say it out loud. Every family should have one thing that's slow. Ours fits in a ring box. Speaking of things kept in the back of address books, our next story is about my father's guest list ledger, which goes back to 1987 and forgives nothing. My dad decides wedding guest lists with a spreadsheet. not a fresh spreadsheet per wedding. One continuous, living document he has maintained since before spreadsheets were software. It started as a notebook in 1987, moved to the computer sometime in the 90s, and it tracks one thing: who invited us and who we invited, and whether the books balance. The rule is reciprocity. If the Kowalskis invited our family to their daughter's wedding in 1994, then the Kowalskis are owed an invitation, and that debt stays on the books until it is paid. It does not expire, it does not depreciate. When my sister got married, my dad produced the ledger and read out names like a man settling accounts at the end of a long voyage. Some of the people on that list, none of us could picture. The Brennans, my dad said, tapping the screen. They had us in 91. Lovely people. We owe them. My sister asked, reasonably, who the Brennans were. My dad looked at her the way judges look at people who ask if the law really applies to them. The Brennans came, by the way. Both of them driving in from 2 states over. They danced, they brought a very generous gift, and near the end of the night is the sound. Brennan found my dad, shook his hand and said, "Books are square now, Tom." He had a ledger too. They'd both been carrying that invitation for 30 years, waiting for someone to get married so it could be paid. My mum says the two of them talked in the corner for an hour like a pair of retired diplomats. There's one entry in the ledger that will never balance, and my dad protects it. His college roommate, who had him as best man in 1985, passed away before any of us kids were old enough to marry. His widow gets invited to everything, every wedding, every christening, every big anniversary, and she always comes and she always says, "You didn't have to," and my dad always says, "It's in the book." It is. I've seen the entry. It just says permanent. The number that tells you everything. The ledger currently has 4 outstanding debts owed to our family and 2 we owe out. My dad checks it maybe twice a year. When my brother's engagement was announced last spring, Dad had the preliminary list drafted before the champagne was open. Somewhere in this world, the Hendersons owe us from 2009, and they're on it, and I promise you they know. That story's over. A ledger old enough to have its own wedding, enforcing 30-year-old kindnesses like they were signed contracts. It sounds cold, and it's the warmest thing my father does. Everyone gets remembered. The books stay square. Staying with the paperwork of love, our next story is about the save the dates, which must arrive in the correct order, and the mailing operation that guarantees it. In my family, when you send save the dates, they can't just go out in a pile. They arrive in order. Grandma's card arrives first, before anyone else's, ideally by 2 full days. Then the aunts and uncles, oldest to youngest, then cousins, then friends. The card itself is identical. The information is identical. But the order of arrival is a ranking, and everyone reads it as one, because in this family it has always been one. Nobody defends this system. I want to be clear about that. Every single member of my family will tell you it's ridiculous. And every single one of them checks the postmark. The origin, as best anyone can reconstruct, was 1996, when my aunt mailed her save the dates in one batch like a normal person, and my grandmother received hers a day after her own sister did. Nothing was ever said directly. Things were said indirectly for about a decade. My aunt maintains to this day that the postal service did it to her, and she says the postal service, the way you'd name a rival who ruined your life. So now there's a protocol. My cousin, the most recent bride, walked me through her operation like a heist. Grandma's card, hand, delivered, technically mailed by placing it in Grandma's own mailbox to guarantee day one. The elder aunts mailed Monday. The younger aunts, Wednesday. Cousins, Friday. Friends, whenever. She had a calendar for it. Her fiancé thought she was joking until he watched her drive 40 minutes to Grandma's mailbox with one envelope, and then he stopped thinking anything was a joke, which the family agrees is the correct preparation for marriage. The one true crisis came 2 years ago, when a batch got shuffled somewhere in the mail and accusing a middle cousin got his card before the eldest aunt got hers. He knew instantly what he was holding. He said he stood at his mailbox feeling like a man who'd been handed classified documents. And here's what he did, and why I love this family. He put it back, resealed the box, said nothing, and waited 4 days to receive it again. The aunt's card landed in the meantime. Order was preserved. He told everyone the story at the wedding itself, and the aunt in question laughed harder than anyone and then said quietly, "Good boy." That story ends there. Identical cards, choreographed mail, one cousin holding an envelope like it was radioactive. The wedding was lovely. Grandma's card is still on her fridge, and if you check the postmark, it's a day before everyone else's. It always will be. Speaking of things arriving in the proper order, our next story concerns my Aunt Carol, who has vetoed 3 wedding venues on the grounds of acoustics and what she's actually listening for. My Aunt Carol has one superpower and one veto, and she uses them together. Whenever anyone in the family gets engaged, at some point in the venue search, Carol is brought along to a walkthrough. This was optional exactly once, for the first wedding, before anyone understood what was happening. It has been mandatory ever since, not because anyone requires it, but because not bringing Carol has become unthinkable in the way the biggest family rules always are. Carol walks into the venue. She doesn't look at the flowers or the lighting or the parking. She walks to roughly the middle of the room, stands still, closes her eyes and listens. Sometimes she claps once, softly. The venue people, who have seen everything, have never seen this. And then she opens her eyes and delivers a verdict of 1 or 2 words. Fine. Good. Or the one everyone fears, boomy. Boomy is a veto. Nobody negotiates with boomy. She has vetoed 3 venues across 4 family weddings. A barn, boomy. A beautiful hall downtown, boomy, and the echo's got a delay on it, which she said the way doctors deliver test results. And a garden pavilion, which she vetoed for the opposite problem. The sound just leaves. Nothing holds it. The family has never once overridden her, and the reason is that at every wedding held in a Carol-approved room, you can hear the toasts, all of them, from every seat. Old people don't lean over asking what was said. The laughs land everywhere at once. You don't notice it, which is the whole point. You only notice sound when it's wrong. It took me years to learn where this came from, and it's the kind of thing you learn once and never forget. Carol's own wedding in 1989 was in a beautiful, cavernous, terrible room. Her father, my great-uncle, who died when I was small, gave a toast that everyone says was the best anyone ever gave, and she couldn't hear it. She was 40 feet away at the head table, and the room ate it. She watched everyone laugh and cry at words that never reached her. There's no tape. He wouldn't write things down. It's just gone, and she was there, and she still couldn't hear it. So now Carol stands in the middle of empty rooms, closing her eyes, making sure that whatever gets said in that room to the people she loves, they will hear it. Every word, from every seat. That story's over. 3 vetoes, 1 clap, and a woman guarding every toast in this family because she lost one. Boomy means no. Now you know why, and so do the venues. From guarding sound to guarding fabric, our next story is about my mother's wedding dress, which lives in a sealed box, and the ceremony that happens every time someone in this family gets engaged. My mother's wedding dress has been professionally preserved since 1983. It lives in an acid-free box at the top of the closet in the guest room, behind a door that stays closed to keep the light off it. The box has a little window. Through the window you can see a sleeve. As kids we believed the room was haunted, and honestly the family has done nothing to discourage this. Here is the ritual. When a bride joins this family, daughter, granddaughter, niece, daughter-in-law, the dress does not care about blood. There comes an afternoon, early in the planning, when my mother invites her over, just the women. The box comes down. The seal gets opened, which takes 10 minutes and 2 people and a letter opener reserved for this, and the bride tries on the dress. Every bride has done it. Not one bride has worn it. That's the system, and everyone understands it perfectly except the brides, who each need it explained exactly once. Because the dress is, and I say this with love, extremely 1983. The sleeves are an event, the shoulders have opinions. My sister described putting it on as being hugged by a wedding cake, and my sister-in-law, who is very kind, managed it so well preserved before her. Voiced it something complicated. The trying on is not an audition. Nobody is deciding anything. The bride puts on the dress, and my mother looks at her and gets exactly 1 tissue's worth of emotional, and then they open the champagne that has been waiting in the fridge since the engagement was announced, and the bride tells the story at her shower. Of course I tried on the dress, and the dress goes back in the box for the next one. It is, as far as I can tell, a machine for making sure every bride spends one afternoon being looked at by my mother the way my grandmother once looked at her. The dress is just the excuse. It's the best preserved excuse in the state. The part I didn't know until recently, there's a guest book in the box. A little card tucked in the tissue paper where every woman who has tried on the dress has signed her name and the date. 9 names, starting with my mother's own, 1983. My sister's is there. When my brother's fiancée signed it last year, my mother said 10 very quietly to nobody. The card is almost full. There's been discussion of adding a second card. The discussion was very short, because obviously there will be a second card. That story ends there. 40 years, 10 brides, 1 dress that has attended every engagement and no weddings. Long may it stay in the box, and long may everyone keep trying it on anyway. Speaking of things standing at the front of weddings, our next story concerns my Uncle Denny, who got ordained on the internet in 2009, and what happened there. One time we hired a professional. My Uncle Denny became a minister on a Tuesday. It took him, by his own proud account, 11 minutes online, and he did it for 1 wedding, my cousin's, because the couple wanted someone who knows us. What nobody understood at the time was that the family had just installed a permanent piece of infrastructure. Denny has now officiated 6 family weddings, 2 vow renewals, and 1 extremely solemn backyard ceremony for a dog's birthday that got out of hand. He's good. That's the thing nobody expected. Denny is a retired shop teacher with enormous hands and no public speaking background, and it turns out he's exactly what you want at the front of a wedding. He keeps it short. He tells one story about the couple that nobody knew because he does actual research. He takes each person out for lunch beforehand, separately, and asks them things. He cries a little at every single one at the same point right before the rings and pretends he doesn't. The family calls it Denny's spot. You can watch for it. Aunts elbow each other when it's coming. Then came the year we hired a professional. My cousin married into a family with strong opinions and a family friend who does weddings, a real officiant with a website and a lapel mic and packages. Denny was gracious about it, truly. He said, "It's their day," in the tone of a man being extremely gracious, and sat in the third row with his hands folded. The professional was fine. That's the fairest and cruelest thing I can say. Smooth, warmish, 20 minutes, no mistakes. He called the groom Michael twice. The groom's name is Mitchell. Both families felt the difference, the way you feel a dip in road quality. Nothing dramatic, just the sudden awareness that it had been better before. Back, when the man up front had eaten lunch with both of these people and cried in his spot. At the reception, the bride's grandmother from the Opfair family, who had met Denny for 1 hour at the rehearsal, patted his hand and said, "You'll do ours." I assume. Hours. An 80-year-old woman pre-booking her own vow renewal with a shop teacher she'd just met. He did it too, 2 years later, cried in his spot. That story's over. 11 minutes of internet paperwork in 2009, and this family has never once needed to ask who's standing up front. It's Denny. It's always Denny. The lunch is part of the package, and the tears are free. Speaking of family infrastructure, our next story is about my aunt Renata, who runs the registry like Border Patrol and the Great Toaster Interception of 2019. When anyone in my family gets engaged, Aunt Renata assigns herself one job, and it is a real job, and she does it better than most people do their actual jobs. She polices the registry, not the building of it, the defense of it. Her mission, in her own words, no duplicates, not on my watch, not again. The not again matters, and we'll get there. Here's how it works. Renata keeps her own private copy of every registry, and she tracks it against intelligence she gathers from the whole extended network. Aunt Doreen mentions at lunch she's thinking of getting the couple a stand mixer. Logged. The registry already shows a stand mixer purchased. Renata makes a phone call. The calls are legendary. They're gentle, they're warm, and they do not end until you've committed to a different gift. "Doreen, honey, the mixer's gone. I'm going to steer you toward the knife block. You'll be the knife block person. Isn't that nice?" And Doreen, who called about a mixer, hangs up as the knife block person, feeling somehow that she won. Off-registry gifts are where Renata shows her range, because you can't track what was never listed, so she runs interviews. Family members buying surprises get a friendly call to coordinate, which everyone knows means declare your cargo. Most people just tell her, it's easier. The ones who resist get the long game. Renata simply mentions in passing near them at gatherings what the couple still needs, until the resistors surprise. Quietly conforms to the master plan. My uncle held out for 3 weeks once with a mystery gift. It turned out to be towels. Renata had listed him as probable towels from day 2. She showed me the note. And the origin, the not again. Her own wedding, 1988. She opened in front of the whole reception, as was the style then, 4 toasters. 4. One after another. She had to smile bigger at each one, and the family, who loves her, laughed harder at each one. And by the fourth, she was laughing too, the way you laugh when you've decided something permanent. 3 toasters went back. 1 was kept, and it still works. And every time it comes up, she says, it's a good toaster. There just didn't need to be 4 of it. No bride under her protection has ever opened a duplicate. 36 years, 0 doubles. The best number at the last wedding, the couple received 91 gifts, every single one distinct. Every single one either from the registry or Renata cleared. The thank you notes practically wrote themselves. The couple has no idea how unusual this is. They think gift giving just works. It doesn't. Renata works. That story ends there. 1 woman, 4 toasters worth of motivation, and 36 years of a perfect record. Somewhere right now she's steering someone toward a knife block, and that person feels lucky. They should. From gifts to geography, our next story concerns the table map. The seating diagram for every family wedding, and table 9, which has a special job. Every family has people who shouldn't sit together. Ours has a map. The map is drawn fresh for each wedding, but it follows doctrine that has been stable for 20 years, and the doctrine is maintained by my mother and her sister working together at a kitchen table with a pencil, an eraser, and the kind of quiet focus you see in bomb disposal documentaries. The rules, as I've absorbed them over the years. The 2 second cousins who had the business dispute in 2011, never the same table, never adjacent tables, ideally a buffer of 2 tables and, quote, a structural pillar if the room provides one. The aunt who critiques food, seated with the family members who either can't hear her or genuinely enjoy it. Big talkers get distributed, never concentrated, because, per my mother, you have to spread the weather around. Kids near a wall with an escape route. Grandma wherever grandma wants, determined by asking grandma, which is its own diplomatic process because grandma always says anywhere is fine and means one specific chair. And then there's table 9. Table 9 is the masterpiece. Table 9 is where the map puts everyone who has no history with anyone. The +1s, the new boyfriends, the co-worker who actually came, the neighbor. Invited out of the ledger my dad keeps. Strangers to each other, all of them, with nothing in common except 0 grudges. And here is the thing the family has known for 20 years. Table 9 has the best time at every single wedding. Every time, no history means no caution. By the second course, they're laughing like old friends, because they're becoming exactly that, from scratch, at a table with no weather at all. 2 marriages have come out of table 9, actual marriages, of people seated there as strangers. Both couples requested table 9 at their own weddings for other people. The doctrine spreads. The experiment, because there's always one, at my cousin's wedding, her fiancé's family, nice people, no map tradition, insisted on alphabetical seating. Neutral, fair, simple. My mother and my aunt said nothing. They just watched, pencil still, like retired pilots on a commercial flight. Alphabetical seating put the 2011 second cousins at the same table. It placed the food critic beside the groom's mother, who had cooked the rehearsal dinner. It concentrated 4 big talkers at table 2, which spent the evening in a volume arms race nobody could win. Nothing exploded. It was all just slightly, persistently effortful, the whole night, everywhere. On the drive home, my aunt said one sentence, "That's what rooms feel like without a map." My mother nodded. Case closed. That story's over. A pencil, an eraser, 20 years of doctrine, and a stranger table that keeps turning strangers into family. If you're ever at one of our weddings and you're seated at table 9, congratulations. You're about to have the best night of anyone in the room. Speaking of assigned positions, our next story is about the toast draft, the system that decides who speaks at family weddings, and my father who once traded away his own slot. Somewhere in the last 20 years, this family developed a rule that the number of toasts at a wedding is capped at 5. This came after an evening the family calls the long wedding, at which 11 people spoke, several of them twice, and the kitchen had to hold dinner for 90 minutes, 5 slots, hard cap. And where there's a cap, there's competition, and where there's competition, this family builds a system, so the draft. It works like this. The couple holds 2 slots by right. Best man, maid of honor, untouchable, that's the constitution. The remaining 3 slots get allocated at a family dinner about 2 months out, through a process that is half negotiation and half sports draft. You announce your intent to speak. You make your case. Relationship to the couple, quality of your last toast, whether you have something. Having something is the trump card. If you can credibly claim you have something, a story, an angle, a photograph nobody's seen, the room tends to yield. And slots can be traded. That's the part outsiders never believe. My uncle once ceded his slot at one wedding in exchange for a guaranteed slot at the next one because, he said, my material's better suited to Danny's crowd. He said material. He said crowd. He was completely serious, and the trade was honored 2 years later without anyone writing anything down, because the family ledger never forgets a deal. The greatest draft moment belongs to my father. At my sister's wedding, Dad held a slot, father of the bride, basically automatic. And 2 weeks out, he traded it away. Gave it to my grandmother, who had mentioned once quietly that she had something she wanted to say. He took the first dance introduction instead, a non-speaking role, the draft equivalent of a bag of practice balls. The family was baffled. Then Grandma stood up at the reception and told the story of my sister's first week home from the hospital during the ice storm when the power went out. A story not one person in that room had ever heard, including my mother. And my dad sat there with his eyes shining, looking like a general manager watching his draft picks score, and whispered, "I knew she had something." That story ends there. 5 slots, a trading floor, and one father who read the board perfectly. The cap holds to this day. Dinner has never once been late again, and nobody bids against Grandma anymore. From speeches to inventory, our next story concerns the borrowed library, my grandmother's collection of something borrowed, complete with checkout cards. Something old, something new, something borrowed, something blue. Most families treat that as a rhyme. My grandmother treats it as a lending system with 40 years of circulation records. It lives in a wooden box in her cedar closet, maybe 20 small objects, each wrapped in tissue, each with a story. Her mother's hair comb, a little silver bracelet, Great Aunt Rose's handkerchief with the crocheted edge, a tiny blue glass bird, origin disputed, claimed by 2 branches of the family, held by Grandma precisely so the dispute stays theoretical. When a bride in this family needs her, something borrowed, she doesn't scrounge, she visits the library. And it is a library because everything is catalogued. Inside the box lid, Grandma keeps index cards, 1 per item, listing every bride who has ever borrowed it and the year. The Combs card is nearly full. 1962, 1979, 1983, 1991, on and on. Reading it is like reading tree rings. Brides pick their item partly by object and partly by card. My sister chose the bracelet specifically because it had been worn by the two great aunts she was named after. She said putting it on with that card lying open felt like both of them squeezing her wrist at once. The rules are library rules. Items are borrowed for the wedding day only. Return within the week, in person, over tea. The tea is mandatory. The tea is obviously the actual point, and Grandma marks the card and files it back. Late returns incur a fine, and the fine is cookies. Real rule. My cousin returned the hair comb 9 days late in 2015 and baked 24 snickerdoodles in penance, which Grandma accepted with the gravity of a court, settling a debt, and then everyone ate the fine together at the kitchen table. Only one item has ever been lost. The little pearl earring, singular, its partner already lost before living memory, went missing at a reception in 2003. The bride was devastated. Grandma was not. She took the card out of the box, wrote across it, right-eyed, gave its all at Jenny's wedding, and filed it back with the active cards where it remains. Not removed. Retired. Jenny, 20 years married now, still brings it up like a scar she's proud of, and Grandma always says the same thing. It went out working. That story's over. 20 objects, 40 years of checkout cards, and a fine system denominated in baked goods. The little blue bird, if you're wondering, has been borrowed 11 times and both branches still claim it. Grandma says it belongs to the box. The box says nothing. The system holds. Speaking of things families argue with the sky about, our next story is about my father and the tent. 15 outdoor weddings, 15 tents, and not one drop of rain. Every outdoor wedding in this family arrives, eventually, at the same crossroads. Do we rent the tent? The tent is expensive. The tent is ugly. The tent means admitting the sky might betray you on the most photographed day of your life. And in my family, the tent question belongs to one man. My father doesn't pay for it. He doesn't set it up. His role is stranger. He agonizes, publicly, on behalf of everyone. It starts about a month out. Dad begins consulting forecasts the way other men check stocks, multiple sources, cross-referenced, trends noted. 10 days out, he starts delivering briefings nobody requested. Patterns shifting. That system could stall. He uses the word system, and the whole family has learned not to laugh. By the final week, he's in open communion with the tent rental company, whose owner now greets him by first name and, I suspect, has a note on the account, the way the furnace company has one about Grandpa's naps. And every single time, the deliberation ends the same way. He rents the tent. 15 outdoor weddings over roughly 30 years. 15 tents. And the number that has passed into family scripture, 0 drops of rain. Not one. 15 rented tents, 15 flawless skies. The tent has never once been needed, and this family has spent, by my uncle's bitter arithmetic, enough on unused tents to have paid for a small additional wedding. Which means the family now holds 2 articles of faith, fully contradictory, both held with total conviction. 1. The tent is a waste of money, always has been. 2. The tent is the reason it doesn't rain. Renting it is what keeps the sky polite. An insurance policy where the premium itself wards off the claim. Nobody says this seriously. Everybody believes it completely. At my sister's wedding, the forecast was so clean that the couple announced they were skipping the tent, and the family reacted like they'd announced they were. Skipping the vows. My grandmother, a rational woman, said, "You can't not rent the tent, that's how you get rain." Words in that order from the family's Supreme Court. They rented the tent. It did not rain. The system holds. That story ends there. 30 years, 15 empty tents, and a family that has quietly decided the weather can be bribed. Honestly, the evidence is 15 for 15. You want to laugh, but you'd rent the tent too. Everyone rents the tent. From the sky to the speakers, our next story concerns my cousin the DJ, the band songs list, and the one request grandma makes at every single wedding. My cousin Marcus has DJ'd every family wedding since he was 19. He's a real DJ, actual equipment, actual skill. But for family events, his most important asset is a laminated document he calls the list. The list is the band songs list, and it is the accumulated scar tissue of every family reception since before he was born. Each entry has a history nobody will fully explain. The chicken dance, banned 2004, the reasons described only as the incident with the punch bowl. One extremely famous slow song, banned because it was the first dance song of a couple whose divorce reshaped 3 Thanksgivings. Playing it, Marcus says, would be detonating an heirloom. One upbeat song from the 80s, banned because it makes 2 specific uncles attempt a specific lift, and the uncles are no longer of lifting age, and they will not accept this, so the song simply cannot exist near them. The list is single-spaced. It has 17 entries. It is consulted before every playlist and updated after most weddings, the way constitutions grow by amendment. And then there's Grandma. At every wedding, every one, at some point in the second hour, Grandma makes her way to the booth and requests the same song. And the song is ON the list. Banned since before Marcus took over, banned by his predecessor, banned for reasons that predate the list's written records. All anyone knows is it was her. And Grandpa's song. And Grandpa has been gone 20 years, and somewhere along the way someone decided the family couldn't handle it and the band stuck. Grandma knows it's banned. That's the ritual. She requests it. Marcus says, "It's on the list, Grandma." She pats his cheek and says, "I know, sweetheart." Just checking it's still there, and she walks back to her table. That's the whole exchange. She's not asking him to play it. She's making sure the family still keeps it, that the song is still important enough to be dangerous, still guarded, still theirs. The band list is where the family keeps its most powerful things, and she likes to visit. Last wedding, Marcus did something nobody expected. Last song of the night, everyone half gone, lights low, he played the instrumental version, no words. Just the melody, quiet, underneath the goodbyes. He watched Grandma from the booth. She stopped in the middle of putting on her coat and stood still for the length of one verse, and then looked over at the booth and gave him a nod, the smallest nod ever recorded, and finished her buttons. It went back on the list the next morning. Both of them pretend it never happened. The card in this library is marked, you might say, retired. That story's over. 17 banned songs, 1 standing request, and a DJ who found the one legal way to play an illegal song. Every family keeps its treasures somewhere. Ours keeps them on a laminated list where they're safe. Speaking of official proceedings, our next story is about cake tastings, which in my family are not a couple's romantic outing. They are a panel review. Somewhere in the last few decades, this family decided that cake tasting is too important to leave to the two people getting married. So when a tasting is scheduled, the couple arrives at the bakery to find that their intimate afternoon has an audience. 4 to 6 family members, self-selected through a process nobody controls, seated and ready. My aunt brings printed scoring sheets. She made them herself, refined them over the years, categories for crumb, frosting, balance, and a final column labelled simply, would I return to it, which she insists is the only number that matters. A cake you'd score high but never return to, she says, is a cake for strangers. The bakeries handle this astonishingly well, mostly because our family has been doing it long enough that 2 local bakeries now just set out extra chairs when they see the surname on the booking. One owner reportedly calls us the delegation. The Great Lemon Schism must be mentioned, briefly, respectfully. 2016, my cousin's tasting. The panel split, hard, over a lemon cake, half declaring it the finest work the delegation had ever reviewed, half maintaining that lemon is not a wedding. Flavour, a position with no written basis that its holders defend like scripture. The debate outlived the tasting. It resurfaced at 2 subsequent family dinners. The couple, everyone forgets this part, solved it in the only way this family respects. They served both. Lemon and vanilla, 2 modest cakes instead of 1 grand one. Both sides claimed victory, and the reception line for cake moved twice as fast, which the family now treats as ancient wisdom rather than a 4-year-old. Compromise. Every wedding since, 2 cakes. The schism became doctrine, and the doctrine became dessert. Here's the tender part, and there's always a tender part. The scoring sheets get kept, all of them, every tasting, in a folder at my aunt's house, not for data, for the marginalia. Because panelists write comments, and the comments outlive everything. My grandfather sat on 4 panels before he died, and his sheets are in that folder. His blocky handwriting next to a chocolate entry, too fancy for its own. Good. And next to the almond, at what would be my sister's wedding, this one. She'll pick this one. She hadn't picked yet. She picked it. At her 10th anniversary, my aunt photocopied the sheet and framed it for her, and it hangs in her kitchen. Grandpa calling the cake in pencil from years away. That story ends there. Scoring sheets, a delegation with a reputation, and one man's handwriting still picking cakes from the folder. Would I return to it? That really is the only column that matters, for cake and for most things. From cake to speeches, our next story concerns the vetting office, my mother, every toast since 2003, and the incident nobody will describe. Every toast at every family wedding crosses my mother's desk before it crosses a microphone. This is policy. It has been policy since 2003, and it was created, this is all anyone will say, because of the incident of '03. What happened in 2003? 20 years of asking has produced only fragments, assembled like pottery shards. There was a best man. There was an unplanned theme. Someone's ex was referenced at length. Grandma left the room. This detail is confirmed by multiple witnesses and is, by our family's physics, the equivalent of a government falling. Beyond that, the record is sealed. The adults who were present exchange one particular look when it comes up, and the look is the whole archive. So now there's the office. Speakers submit their toast to my mother at least 1 week out. Submission methods have modernized over the years. Index cards, then email, now voice memos, which she prefers because, in her words, the problem is never the words, it's the delivery ideas. She reviews within 48 hours and returns notes. The notes are surgical and kind, and always framed as gifts. The fishing story is wonderful. The part about the hospital, save that for the anniversary, when it'll land even better. Nothing is banned, things are reassigned. Every cut line gets a future venue. The rehearsal dinner, the 40th birthday, a quiet moment with just the two of you. She maintains, apparently sincerely, that no material is bad, only misscheduled. Speakers leave the process feeling edited upward. It takes them years to notice nothing risky survived. And it works. That's the inarguable center of this story since 2003, 21 years of family weddings, and not one toast has gone wrong. No walkouts, no long references to exes, no themes. Meanwhile, the toasts are, and guests from other families remark on this, consistently, weirdly good. The Office doesn't just remove danger, it leaves only the parts people cry at. Other families think we're naturally eloquent. We are not. We are erudite. The full circle moment came 2 years ago, when the best man from 2003, older now, greyer, 20 years wiser, submitted a toast to the Office for my cousin's wedding. First time back at a family microphone since the incident. He submitted 6 days early. My mother returned it with one note. Perfect. Don't change a word. He printed the note and kept it in his jacket pocket during the toast, which was, everyone agrees, the best of that wedding. What was in the 03 toast stays sealed. What was in the 23 one was a man who'd learned what the Office was for, working with the editor instead of around her. That story's over. One classified incident, 21 years of clean audio, and an editor who never rejects, only reschedules. Somewhere in my mother's files is everything this family almost said out loud. Best archive we have. May it stay closed. Speaking of archives, our next story is about the shot list, 4 pages of mandatory photo combinations, and the missing picture of 1998 that created them. My Aunt Lorraine, you may remember her from the reunion photo quiz, if you were awake for it 2 videos ago, brings a document to every family wedding. 4 pages, typed, titled, without irony, Riot-Quired Combinations. It is handed to the photographer during setup, and it lists every photo grouping that must be captured before the photographer's other duties begin. All grandchildren with grandma. Each branch of the family separately, then together. The cousins in birth order. She checks the order. The 4 women named after great-grandma Rose. A photo that has been taken at every wedding since 1999, and now forms a series in which you can watch 4 women, aged together in matching arrangement, which is either beautiful or unsettling, depending on which one of them you ask. Photographers react to the list in stages. Amusement. Resistance. I like to keep things candid. Then, as Lorraine walks them through it with the calm of a woman who has outlasted 11 photographers. Acceptance. She gets every combination inside 25 minutes flat. She has it down to a drill. Groupings pre-sorted. People staged in waves. Nobody wandering off because she stations a nephew at each exit. Photographers finish the list and are startled to find the whole thing was excellent training for wrangling any wedding. 2 have since adopted required combinations lists as an upsell. She views this the way inventors view patents generously waived. The reason for the list is one missing photograph, 1998. Her brother's wedding, the last family wedding before great-uncle Walt died. Beautiful day, hundreds of photos. Everyone's certain it was all captured. Months later, sorting the prints, the family slowly realized There was no photo of Walt with his 3 sisters. All 4 had been there in one room, dressed beautifully for 6 hours. Hundreds of frames, Walt laughing with the groomsmen, the sisters at their tables, and not one of the 4 of them together. The last chance nobody knew was the last chance. Lorraine has never once told this story at a wedding. She just hands over the list. Page 1, first required combination, every wedding since, ALL siblings, first, before anything. That story ends there. 4 typed pages, 25 drilled minutes, and 1 photograph that doesn't exist doing all the work. Candid is lovely. Combinations are forever. The photographer will understand around page 2, and if not, Lorraine has time. She's outlasted 11. From documentation to admission standards, our next story concerns the +1 tribunal and the 2 requirements for bringing a date to a family wedding. +1s at our family weddings are governed by 2 rules, unwritten and iron. Rule 1, 3 dates minimum. You do not bring someone to a family wedding whom you have seen fewer than 3 times, because a family wedding is not a date, it is an immersion, and immersing an innocent person prematurely is considered cruel to them and reckless with the family's material. Rule 2, and this is the load-bearing one, Grandma has to have met them. Not approved them, MET them. The distinction is the whole system. There's no evaluation, no verdict. Grandma likes everyone. But before you may bring someone to a wedding, they must have sat at her kitchen table at least once, had a coffee, been asked whether they eat enough, and received the tour of the hallway photographs. That's it. That's the tribunal. 1 coffee. The family calls it getting stamped, as in, is she stamped? Because Danny's wedding is in June. Why does the stamp matter if there's no judgment attached? Because of what the coffee does. An hour at that kitchen table converts a stranger into someone. Grandma waves at across a reception. Someone with 1 story already inside the family. Someone. Who knows what the hallway photos are and which one is Walt? They arrive at the wedding already slightly OURS. The difference between a stamped +1 and an unstamped one at a reception is the difference between a guest and a spectator, and this family decided long ago it doesn't host spectators. The rule produced its masterpiece at my cousin's wedding 4 years ago. Her boyfriend of 6 weeks, 2 dates, unstamped, both rules failed, could not come. She didn't even argue, the rules are the rules. But the timing was sad, and Grandma heard about it, and Grandma did something unprecedented, she called him. Invited him for coffee, herself, 10 days before the wedding, stamped him personally. He showed up at that reception knowing 1 person in 300, and was greeted by name by an 80-year-old woman who introduced him at her table as my friend Marcus. Reader, she deployed him to table 9. Of course she did. Best night of anyone in the room. They're married now. At their wedding, Grandma pointed out correctly that she had technically been their first date chaperone and demanded the toast lot to say so. No one bid against her. No one ever does. That story's over. 3 dates, 1 coffee, 1 hallway of photographs, and a system whose only function is making sure nobody stands alone at the edge of our weddings. The tribunal has no verdicts, just a stamp, and the stamp is a welcome. Speaking of guarded doors, our next story is about the getting ready rooms, who may enter which room on the morning of a family wedding, and the hallway that stays neutral. Wedding mornings in this family are organized like a small benevolent security operation. There are 2 rooms, the bride's side and the groom's side, and one hallway, and everyone in the family knows the clearance system by heart, though it exists nowhere on paper. The bride's room has tiers. Tier 1, present from breakfast onward, the bridesmaids, the mothers and grandma, who holds what amounts to a lifetime all-access pass and uses it mostly to sit in the corner armchair narrating everyone's beauty in a low running commentary the brides all say later was the best part of the day. Tier 2, admitted by knock for defined purposes, aunts bearing food, Lorraine executing page 1 of the shot list, the flower delivery. Tier 3, hallway only, everyone else. The hallway is Switzerland. In the hallway, anyone may wait, exchange reports. She's in the dress is ON, and pass items through the door via a designated runner. Traditionally the most trustworthy teenage cousin, a role of enormous prestige. The groom's room, by contrast, has no tiers, because the groom's room self-regulates into 2 phases. Phase 1, most of the morning, cards, snacks, ties draped over chairs, a level of calm so excessive it's almost a performance. Phase 2, 20 minutes before photos, triggered by whichever uncle checks his watch first, a brief, total panic involving every cufflink in the county. The family does not intervene in either phase. The groom's room is considered a natural process, like weather. The one law both rooms share, the actual iron rule of the morning, is the door itself. The couple does not see each other, and the family enforces this with a seriousness that has produced its own folklore, including the famous hallway maneuver of 2012, when both rooms' doors opened at the same moment and 4 separate relatives, acting on pure instinct, executed a coordinated scream, bodies angled, a tray raised, one aunt suddenly, very tall, that both the bride and groom describe as a wall of family appearing from nowhere. They didn't see each other. They heard each other laughing through the wall of relatives, which everyone agrees is better. That story ends there. 2 rooms, 3 tiers, 1 neutral hallway, and a family that will assemble itself into a physical barrier in under a second to protect one superstition. The runner cousin from 2012 got promoted to best man eventually. The system develops its own people, it always does. From behind the doors to the aisle itself, our next story is about my grandfather's one wedding job, coaching the walk. My grandfather has walked nobody down the aisle in 30 years. That's not his job. His job, assumed quietly at some wedding in the 90s and never relinquished, is coaching the walk. Every bride in his family, and 2 grooms who requested it, has received, in the final week before the wedding, a session with Grandpa on how to walk down the aisle. The session happens wherever there's a hallway. The instruction is brief, because Grandpa believes coaching, like toasts, should be short. There are 3 points, delivered the same way every time, counted on his fingers. 1, slower than feels right. Whatever pace feels right, that's nerves lying to you, halve it. 2, pick 3 faces. 1 near the back, 1 in the middle, 1 at the front. Everyone else is scenery. You walk face to face to face. 3, and this is the one all the brides quote for the rest of their lives. It's the only time every person you love will be in one room looking at you, and you don't have to say anything. Don't rush past that. Then he makes them practice. Twice, arm in arm with him, down whatever hallway it is, at the correct slowness, which every single bride reports feels absurd, glacial, theatrical, right. Up until the actual moment when it feels suddenly exactly right, and they understand that Grandpa has calibrated it to the moment rather than the rehearsal. He counts steps under his breath while they practice. Nobody knows what he does with the count. It's suspected he just likes knowing. He has one metric of success, gathered afterward at every reception. He asks the bride, "Did you see faces or a blur? 30 years of data." The coached ones say faces. My sister says she can still, a decade later, name her 3. Her college roommate near the back, Aunt Renata in the middle, and Mum at the front. She says the walk lasted 40 seconds, and she remembers it more clearly than most years of her life. That's the coaching. That's the whole product. He slows the best 40 seconds down until they can be kept. The succession question came up recently. He's 86 and was settled the way this family settles things, by apprenticeship nobody announces. At the last wedding, my sister stood beside him in the hallway during the coaching session watching. Next time, she'll deliver point 1 while he listens. The count, presumably, transfers at the end, whatever it's for. That story's over. 3 fingers, 2 practice laps, 1 question at the reception. Slower than feels right, for aisles and, the brides will eventually report, for most things worth walking through. The blur is optional. It always was. Speaking of things that transfer at the right moment, our next story is about the handkerchiefs, Grandma's embroidery, and the rule about when you get yours. My grandmother embroiders handkerchiefs. White cotton, scalloped edge, initials in one corner in blue thread. She has made one for every child born into this family for 50 years. And here is the system: you don't get yours when you're born. She makes it when you're born. You get it at your wedding. In between, they wait. There's a drawer in her bedroom dresser. Everyone knows which one, where the finished handkerchiefs live, each wrapped in tissue, each labelled, some of them. Waiting 40 years. Your handkerchief exists from your first week of life. You may know about it. You may not see it. The drawer is not a museum. Requests to view your own handkerchief are declined with a pat on the cheek and the same 6 words every time. You'll see it when. It's time. The handoff itself is the most reliably tearful moment at every family wedding. More than the vows, more than the dances, and the family has learned to just schedule around it. It happens in the getting ready room, tier 1 only. About an hour before the ceremony, Grandma knocks. She sits with the bride or groom for a few minutes. Nobody knows exactly what gets said. Tier 1 holds the secret with their lives, and she hands over the tissue packet. Inside, your initials, stitched the week you were born, by hands that are 50 years steadier in the stitching than they are now. You are handed, at the door of your wedding, physical proof that you were loved before you could focus your eyes. Nobody survives it. The photographers have learned to be in the room. Lorraine put it on the list, page 1, combination 2, handkerchief moment. Be ready. 2 details that finish this story. First, divorced members of the family keep their handkerchiefs obviously, but the 2 who remarried each received, without ceremony, without comment, tucked into a coat pocket at some point during the second reception, a second handkerchief, same initials, different border. Nobody discusses this. The message is understood perfectly. Every marriage in this family begins with 1, no exceptions, no rationing of grandmothers. Second, there are 41 finished handkerchiefs in the drawer right now, and Grandma is 90. The math on this is something the family refuses to do out loud. But my mother let slip last year that Grandma has been teaching her the scalloped edge, just in case, nothing serious, and that the newest handkerchiefs, The ones for the babies born these past 2 years are stitched by 4 hands, Grandma starting the initials and my mother finishing the borders. The drawer doesn't know the difference, the drawer just fills. That story ends there. 50 years, 41 packets of tissue paper, and a drawer where the proof waits until you're old enough to understand it. You'll see it when it's time. In this family, it's always been true. From tears to the dance floor, our next story concerns the uncles who deploy in Wave 2 and the signal that activates them. Every wedding dance floor in the world has the same problem. Nobody wants to be first. Our family solved this generations ago with a system so smooth that guests from other families think it's spontaneous. It is the opposite of spontaneous. It is the dance floor protocol, and its core doctrine is this: the uncles are Wave 2, never Wave 1. Wave 1 is the couple's first dance, then the parents' dances, the scheduled program, protected airspace, no freelancing. Wave 2 is the open floor, and an open floor dies in 90 seconds if nobody commits. So when the DJ, Marcus, obviously opens the floor, he doesn't hope. He looks to the uncle's table and gives the signal. The signal has evolved over the years. Currently it's 2 taps on his headphone, which means, in the words of my Uncle Pete, "Gentlemen, we're up." And the uncle's G. 4 men in their 60s, jackets already off. Jackets come off during the parent dances. That's the pre-deployment stage everyone watches for. Hitting the floor simultaneously with a confidence that has nothing to do with skill. They are not good dancers. This is documented across 3 decades of video. They are committed dancers, which the floor rewards infinitely more. Within 1 song, the floor is full, because nobody is shy behind a screen of uncles. Teenagers who'd rather die than dance first will absolutely dance third, behind Uncle Pete doing the move the family calls the lawnmower. The uncles absorb all the embarrassment in the room like lightning rods, and everyone else dances in the safety of their shadow. They take this responsibility seriously in a way that became clear the year Pete had his knee replaced. June wedding, Pete on a cane. Doctors clear about his limits. The family assumed Wave 2 would run 1 man short. Instead, at the signal, Pete rose, walked to the exact center of the floor, planted the cane, and executed what he later called the stationary lawnmower. Upper body only, cane as pivot. Absolutely committed. The floor filled in 40 seconds flat, a family record that stands. His physical therapist heard the story and, per Pete, signed off retroactively, mostly. The succession is already underway because this family does succession the way other families do inheritance. At the last wedding, at the signal, the 4 uncles rose, and with them, unprompted, rehearsed in secret, rose 3 of the Tusins, jackets already off. Wave 2 had grown. Pete reports he nearly missed his cue from the emotion, then didn't, because a professional doesn't. The lawnmower has been formally taught to 2 heirs. The floor will never be empty, not at our weddings. That story's over. 2 taps on a headphone, 4 jackets over 4 chairs, and a wall of committed uncles making the whole room brave. Wave 2 is the real first dance. Everyone knows it. Nobody says it. Speaking of trajectories, our next story is about the bouquet toss, which in this family is not random, has never been random, and involves practice. The bouquet toss looks like chaos everywhere. Ours looks like chaos too. That's the craft. Because somewhere in this family's history, the brides quietly decided that the toss is too meaningful to leave to physics, and a tradition formed that nobody, Official will confirm, the bride aims. It works like this. In the weeks before the wedding, the bride decides, privately or in consultation with her mother and grandma, the toss committee nobody admits exists, who should catch the bouquet. The criteria are never spoken but always legible in hindsight. The cousin who just got serious with someone stamped and lovely. The aunt rebuilding her life who needs the room to cheer for her loudly for a full minute. Once, memorably, a grandmother will get there. And then the bride practices. Backyard, real flowers gone to seed, or a bundle of spoons taped together over the shoulder, blind to a spot. My sister practiced for a week with a bouquet of wooden spoons and put it, on the day, into her best friend's hands so precisely that the friend, who knew the tradition, who was defending like everyone else, described it as a pass. That was a pass. I got assisted. The cover story is maintained by everyone. The crowd jostles. The single cousins leap theatrically. The catch is celebrated as fate. And at the meal afterward, the campaign is quietly reviewed by the older women, the way coaches review film. Clean throw. She drifted left but corrected. My grandmother's assessments are the most technical, and for years nobody understood where her expertise came from. Then, at my cousin's wedding, we found out. The bride, this bride being the kind of person this family produces, decided her aim was grandma. 90 years old, seated, cocoa in hand, expecting nothing. The throw was long and soft and landed in her lap so gently the cocoa never rippled. The room detonated, and Grandma, holding the bouquet, laughing, said loud enough for every table, "Still got it, still." And that's when the aunts finally told us the aiming tradition is Grandma's, 1954. She put her own bouquet into the hands of her sister, who was heartsick over a boy who'd shipped out in front of a room that needed to cheer for her. The sister married that boy the next spring, first recorded assist in family history. The tradition is 70 years old and it started with the woman it just landed on. That story ends there. Wooden spoons in backyards, defenders playing along, and 70 years of brides throwing love at whoever needs it most, disguised as luck. It's never been luck, not once. Ask the room. From the floor to the freezer, our next story is about cake custody. The top tier, the anniversary rule, and the tier from 1994 that will never be eaten. Tradition says you freeze the top tier of your wedding cake and eat it on your first anniversary. Most families attempt this once, discover what a year does to cake, and let the tradition go. This family does not let traditions go. This family built custody arrangements. The rule, the top tier does not go home with the couple. Newlyweds, the family reasons, are moving, distracted, unreliable in matters of long-term frozen goods stewardship. The tier goes to Grandma's chest freezer in the basement, the big one, the one that could hide a person, which has served as the family's cake vault for as long as anyone can remember. Each tier is wrapped in the official manner, plastic, then foil, then a labelled bag, then a second bag, because freezers are damp, a claim nobody verifies. Logged on the masking tape label in Grandma's handwriting, couple, date, and placed on the cake shelf. Yes, the freezer has a cake shelf. It usually holds 2 or 3 tiers in various stages of their year. On the first anniversary, the couple comes to dinner. The custody handoff is a dinner. Everything in this family is a dinner, and the tier is thawed and served. And here is where the system shows its wisdom. Year-old cake, even perfectly vaulted, is a humbling dessert. But at Grandma's table, with the family gathered and Grandpa's old toast glasses out, nobody is really eating cake. They're closing a loop. The couple has been married 1 year, at the same table where the ledger and the tent and the toast drafts all live, and the dry cake is just the occasion. My brother rated his tier objectively terrible, best dessert of my life, which the family has adopted as the official review of all anniversary cake forever. And then there is the 1994 tier, bottom of the cake shelf, wrapped in the old style, label faded but legible, Ray and Elaine, June 1994. Aunt Elaine passed away before their first anniversary. The tier was never thawed. It has now outlived the freezer it started in. When the old freezer died in 2009, the family transferred everything in a relay operation with coolers, and the 94 tier was carried, my mother reports, like a casket at a state funeral, by Ray himself, who then plugged in the new freezer and placed it on the shelf. Bottom position, where it has rested since. Nobody has ever suggested removing it. When new tiers are logged in, they go above it. Every couple's cake, waiting out its year, sits on top of the one that never got eaten, which is, if you think about it, exactly the right place for a marriage to begin. Ray still comes to every custody dinner. He always has a slice. For practice, he says. 30 years of practice. That story's over. A chest freezer, a cake shelf, a 2-bag doctrine, and 1 tier that turned a basement appliance into a memorial. Objectively terrible. Best dessert of our lives. That's the review. It holds. Speaking of closing loops, our next story is about the thank you audit, my mother's 6-week tracker, and the template that makes it survivable. Thank you notes after a family wedding are governed, like toasts, like guest lists, like everything in this family with a failure mode, by my mother. The policy, every gift acknowledged by handwritten note within 6 weeks of the wedding. Not typed, not texted, handwritten, stamped, mailed. And because policies need instruments, there is the tracker. A spreadsheet. She is, after all, married to the man with the ledger, listing every gift from Renata's intelligence files, every giver, and 3 columns, W written, sealed, mailed. Couples receive the tracker as a wedding gift. That sentence sounds like a joke and is not. It arrives in the card box, formatted, pre-populated with every guest, alongside a box of note cards, a roll of stamps, and the template. The template is the masterpiece, refined over decades, 3 sentences long, name the gift specifically. Say where it lives or how it's used. The Blue Bowl has already hosted 2 Sunday soups. Close with a forward look. We can't wait to have you at the new place. 3 sentences, 5 minutes, done. The template exists, my mother says, because the enemy of the thank you note is the belief that it must be good. It must be senti. She has watched generations of couples paralyzed by blank cards, composing masterpieces in their heads for months while the actual card sat blank. The template kills the masterpiece. The template ships. Enforcement is gentle and total. Around week 3, my mother checks in. How are the notes coming? In a tone of pure support that nonetheless activates the same nervous system response as a title company calling about documents. Week 5, if needed, she comes over to help, which means she sits at the table addressing envelopes while the couple writes, which sounds like assistance, and is actually supervision, and also I as assistance, because nothing on earth produces thank you notes like my mother 2 feet away addressing your envelopes. No couple under the audit has ever missed 6 weeks. The record is 19 days, set by my sister, who wanted, quote, to be done and also to be the record holder. Both achieved. The tender fact underneath, which took me years to learn, my mother's own thank you notes, 1979, took her 11 months. She was overwhelmed. New city, new marriage, and the note sat blank and became a weight she still describes with her hand on her chest. The last one she finally sent, to a great aunt who had given them a quilt, crossed in the mail with that aunt's funeral announcement. The aunt never read it. The template, the tracker, the 6 weeks, the sitting at the table addressing envelopes, all of it exists so that nobody in this family ever mails a thank you to someone who can no longer open it. The blue bowl has already hosted 2 Sunday soups. It must be sent. Now you know why. That story ends there. 3 sentences, 6 weeks, 1 tracker. And underneath it, 1 letter from 1980 that arrived too late and built the whole system. Write the notes, folks. The template's yours if you want it. Backing up one night, our next story is about the rehearsal dinner and the loophole that turned it into this family's favourite event of any wedding week. The rehearsal dinner in my family runs on one rule, and the rule created a loophole, and the loophole became the institution. The rule, toasts at the wedding itself, are capped at 5. You'll remember the draft. The loophole, nobody ever caps the rehearsal dinner. So the rehearsal dinner became the open mic. Everyone who lost the draft speaks at the rehearsal. Everyone who had something but not enough to win a slot, the rehearsal. The cousin with the 12-minute slideshow, rehearsal. The aunt with the poem. The college roommate with stories that needed, in my mother's vetting office language, a smaller room. All of it flows to the rehearsal dinner, which over the years has swollen into a gloriously unregulated festival of speeches, running long by design in somebody's backyard with folding tables and food that beats the wedding's food because grandma controls the menu instead of a venue. The family knows exactly what it built. The wedding is for the marriage, the rehearsal is for the family. The wedding toasts are edited, timed and perfect. The rehearsal toasts are 17 deep and include props. My uncle once performed a reenactment of the groom's first attempt at driving stick using 2 chairs. The slideshow cousin premiered a director's cut that included baby bath photos vetoed years earlier by the office. Nothing is vetted at the rehearsal. That's the deal. My mother sits in the front row with her hands folded, off duty, laughing at material she'd never clear because the room is small and everyone in it already loves everyone. The couple gets one protection. By tradition, they're seated facing the speakers with dessert served first. You'll need your strength, Grandma says, plating pie before the first toast. And they are not allowed to respond until everyone finishes. Then the groom or bride stands, full of pie and 17 speeches, and says whatever a person can say after that, which is usually not much, which is the point. My brother-in-law's entire response was, "I understand now. I didn't before. I do now." The family considers it one of the finest speeches ever given. That story ends there. 1 cap, 1 loophole, and a backyard where the overflow became the main event. If you're ever invited to one of our weddings, accept. But if you're invited to the rehearsal dinner, clear your evening. That's the real ticket. Bring nothing. Expect props. Speaking of words that do make the cut, our next story is about Grandpa's notebook and the one line he saves from every wedding. My grandfather carries a small notebook everywhere. Most of what goes in it is ordinary. Lists, reminders, the steps he counts for reasons still unknown. But there's a section at the back, started in 1987, that the family found out about by accident, and it might be the best thing anyone here has ever made. At every family wedding during the vows, Grandpa writes down one line, not the whole vows. One line, whichever sentence in his judgment was the truest thing said that day. He picks it live, in the moment, pen already out. You can watch for it now that you know. Everyone's watching the couple, and Grandpa's watching too. And then at some point his head dips for 4 seconds and that's it, logged. The line has been chosen. Nobody knew for 20 years. He never mentioned it. It came out at my aunt's 25th anniversary party when Grandpa stood to toast and said, 25 years ago, you stood in front of all of us and said, and then read her exact vow line, word for word, from the notebook. The room went silent in a specific way. A room goes silent when it realizes something has been running in the background the whole time. My aunt asked to see the book. Grandpa said no, warmly. He said no, warmly, ever since, to everyone. Here's what he will do, and it's better. At anniversaries, the big ones, the round numbers, the couple gets their line back. He stands, opens to the page, reads it. That's the whole gift. A sentence you said once, under pressure, in front of everyone, returned to you decades later as evidence. My parents got theirs at 30 years. A line my father had completely forgotten writing, about how he didn't promise her an easy life, just a full one. My mother, the woman who runs the vetting office, who has professionally managed every emotion at every event since 2003, put her head down on the table. There are 31 lines in the section now. He guards the notebook, but he did once answer one question about it. My sister asked how he picks the line, what he's listening for. Grandpa thought about it and said, the one they'll need later, you can hear it. It's the one they say quietest, the one they say quietest. He's been catching the quietest sentence at every wedding for almost 40 years and holding it until it's needed. The family has stopped asking to see the book. We've started listening for our own lines instead. You say it quiet apparently. Whatever it is, he'll catch it. That story's over. One notebook, 31 sentences, and an old man listening for the words people will need back someday. Say your vows loud, but say one line quiet. Somewhere in the third row, the pen is already out. From the ceremony to the floor one more time, our next story is about the anniversary dance and the couple that retired undefeated. At every family wedding reception, there comes a moment. Marcus knows the cue, when the DJ calls all married couples to the floor. This is the anniversary dance, and it's not unique to our family, but our family has, characteristically, turned it into a title bout. The rules, for anyone who hasn't seen one, all married couples dance. Then the DJ counts upward. Keep dancing if you've been married more than 5 years. More than 10, and couples sit down as their numbers come up until one couple remains, the longest married in the room. Applause, a spotlight moment, done. Sweet, simple, standard. Ours had a dynasty. For as long as anyone could remember, the dance had one possible ending. Grandma and Grandpa, alone on the floor, at 50-something and counting, waving. Everyone off like champions who'd love a real challenge someday. It became a ritual inside the ritual. The whole room stayed standing to watch their last minute every wedding, because everyone quietly understood the arithmetic of it. You don't know which one is the last one. When Grandpa passed, the family assumed the dance would retire with him. It didn't. Here's what happened at the next wedding, and I want to describe it exactly. The DJ, Marcus, who thinks about these things, who keeps the list, called the anniversary dance as usual. Couples went out, the count climbed. And when it passed 40 years and the last couple sat down and the floor should have been empty, Marcus said into the mic quietly, "Keep standing if you would still be dancing." And Grandma stood up at her table, alone. 90 years old, hand on the chair, up. And the whole room stood with her. Every table, all 300 people, on their feet in total silence for the length of one verse of the song, that is, officially still banned. Then she sat, and everyone sat, and the party went on. It's happened at every wedding since. It has a name now, though nobody says it into the microphone. The family just calls it the standing verse. 61 years that would be this summer, still undefeated. The floor knows its champion. That story ends there. A title never surrendered, a room that stands for the length of one quiet verse, and a DJ who understood that some dances continue whether or not anyone's dancing. Keep standing if you would still be dancing, she would. So we do. Speaking of getaways, our next story concerns the car crew, the Uncle's decoration unit, and the rules that have governed it since 1999. Decorating the getaway car is uncle work. This is settled law in my family. The same 4 uncles who run the dance floor's second wave convene near the end of every reception in the parking lot with a duffel bag of supplies and prepare the couple's car. And their operation is governed by a written code of conduct because of 1999. What happened in 1999 has, unlike most of this family's classified events, been fully declassified, mostly because the uncles tell it on themselves. The 99 crew, younger, unsupervised, ambitious, went too far. Saran wrap was involved, an entire car's worth. Fish notoriously was involved. The couple, attempting to drive to a hotel 40 minutes away, made it 6 blocks. The bride's going away outfit was a casualty. The marriage survived, the methodology did not. Grandma issued a ruling the following week, and the uncles, to their permanent credit, wrote it down, and the code has hung in whoever hosts his garage during every wedding week since. The code, as posted, the car must remain fully drivable, windows, mirrors and door handles untouched, nothing that damages paint. Nothing alive, nothing formally alive, the fish clause, named, everyone knows why, cans on strings, traditional, approved, maximum 12. And the final clause, added later, in different ink, which is the one that turns the whole enterprise from prank to craft. It should be the kind of thing they photograph, not the kind of thing they forgive. Under the code, the uncles got good. Freed from escalation, they turned to artistry. The streamers match the wedding colours now. They coordinate with Renata for the palette. The window paint is professional grade, tested on Uncle Pete's own sedan each spring. The cans are selected for tone. I'm serious. They did a driveway test 1 year and concluded that soup cans ring hollow and switched to seltzer. And somewhere along the way, a final touch became tradition, taped inside the driver's door handle where the groom finds it last, a small envelope. Cash for the first tank of gas and a note. The same note every time, in whichever uncle's turn it is to write it. First one's on us. Drive slow. You've got everything in the car. That story's over. One fish-related incident, one posted code, and 25 years of the same 4 men making sure the last thing a wedding produces is a car worth. Photographing and a full tank. Drive slow. You've got everything in the car. They mean it every time. From the parking lot to the walkway, our next story is about the Sparkler send-off and the aunt with the buckets. Wedding send-offs in this family are done with sparklers, 2 long lines of guests, the couple running through a tunnel of light, everybody's favourite. Photograph. And for 20 years, without appointment or discussion, the Sparkler send-off has been commanded by my Aunt Doreen, known on wedding days, universally and too, her face as the marshal. Doreen's operation begins weeks early with procurement. She buys the long sparklers, the 36-inch ones, the 20-minute burn, she says, the way generals discuss munitions, because short sparklers, per doctrine, create what she calls a relay problem. Half the line burnt out before the couple even appears. She buys 40% more than the guest count. She stages them in labelled coffee cans, lighting side up, at the exits, hours before anyone thinks about leaving. At go time, the marshal deploys the crowd. 2 lines facing pairs, arm's length. She measures by wingspan, walking the line, adjusting people by their shoulders like a wedding photographer's dream and a fire inspector's fever dream at once. Children are stationed at the far end, where the couple slows down on the theory, correct of course, that the pictures there are the keepers. Lighting happens in waves, center outward, timed so the whole tunnel peaks together. She carries the lighter. There is one lighter, it's hers. And then there are the buckets. 2 galvanized buckets of sand, 1 per line's end, into which every spent sparkler must be planted. And this is where Doreen's command becomes legend, because the buckets have caught, over 20 years, 3 near-miss lawn fires, 1 uncle's jacket incident, and, famously, the flower girl of 2011 who attempted to keep a lit sparkler for later inside a hydrangea bush. Doreen intercepted all of them. She sees everything. She has never once been in a send-off photo because she is always at the edge of the frame, lighter in one hand, eyes sweeping the line like Secret Service. If you look at the far margin of every sparkler photograph this family owns, and once you know, you can't stop, there she is, a blur with a bucket guarding the light. Last year, the couple did something about it. At the reunion, they gave Doreen a framed print of their send-off photo, except the photographer, on quiet instruction, had shot 1 frame toward the crowd. Instead, the couple from behind, 2 silhouettes. And facing the camera, lit by the whole tunnel, everyone they love, and at the very edge, mid-sweep, the marshal. First photo she's ever been in. It's on her mantle, center. That story ends there. 1 lighter, 2 buckets, 40% overage, and 20 years at the edge of every frame, so the light never once went wrong. Somebody guards every beautiful thing. Hours carry sand. Speaking of the morning after, our next story is about the brunch, where the wedding gets debriefed and the leftovers find their homes. The morning after every family wedding, there is brunch at whoever lives nearest house, and it is not optional in the way that nothing in this family is. Optional, no one will make you come, and everyone will know you didn't. The brunch has 2 functions, and the first is logistical, the leftovers. A wedding produces a caterer's worth of excess, and this family, the family of the ledger, the tracker, the list, obviously has a distribution protocol. The tiered principle, out-of-town guests pack first, they've got drives, then households with kids, then everyone else, in an order that is officially casual and unofficially exact. The wedding flowers get divided by a parallel system run by the aunts. Centerpieces to whoever's hosting the next family event, the good roses to grandma, and one arrangement, always, wordlessly, set aside for the cemetery. Someone drives it over that week. Nobody assigns this. It's just always done. The second function is the real one, the debrief. Around the table, still in yesterday's hair, the family conducts the full review. Not gossip or not any gossip, but a genuine oral almanac session where the wedding is converted into its permanent form, the stories. Which toast landed hardest? What the 99 code car looked like? Whether the tent, unnecessary, again 15 for 16 now, was worth it. Yes, it's always yes. The sky stayed bribed. The couple themselves attend when the hotel and the flights allow, and there's a special quality to watching two people hear their own wedding retold. 8 hours old and already becoming legend. Already growing the small exaggerations that will harden into canon by Thanksgiving. My cousin heard the standing verse story from 4 angles at her own morning after brunch and said it was like being told about a miracle she personally attended. And at some point, always, Grandma taps her mug and delivers the closing line of every wedding weekend, the same 9 words, a benediction disguised as a scheduling note. Well, I wonder who's next. Pass the potatoes. And the family laughs and passes the potatoes, and somewhere down the table, 2 people who sat at table 9 exchange a look they think nobody sees. Everybody sees. The almanac is already recording. That story's over. Leftovers in tears, flowers with standing assignments, and a review board that turns every wedding into the version the family will keep. I wonder who's next. Pass the potatoes. The whole religion in 9 words. Speaking of things that travel, our next story is about the honeymoon postcard and the wall in Grandma's kitchen where every marriage in this family checks in. There is one requirement of every honeymoon in this family, and only one. Wherever you go, the far side of the world or 2 towns over, and this family has done both, you must send Grandma a postcard. Not a text, not a photo to the group chat, though those are welcome too. A postcard, paper, stamp, her address in your handwriting, a few lines on the back. The assignment is issued at every wedding, always the same way. Grandma finds the couple at the reception, somewhere near the end, presses a book of stamps into the bride's hand like contraband and says, "You know what I want." They always know. Everyone knows. The wall is right there in her kitchen. The wall. Beside Grandma's kitchen window, in plain reach of the table where every application for the ring has ever been heard, hangs a corkboard that stopped being big. Enough sometime in the 90s and was replaced by, essentially, wallpaper. Every honeymoon postcard this family has ever produced. Niagara Falls 1962, her own, mailed to her mother, inherited back when the house emptied, pinned at the top corner where the suns faded it soft. Hawaii. Ireland, twice. The Poconos, 4 times across 3 decades, because this family has budget years like everyone. A gas station postcard from 90 minutes away, sent by my cousin and her husband, who honeymooned at a lake cabin and reported in writing, "Weather's fine. Married life suits us." Back Tuesday. Grandma rates that one among her favourites. They didn't have far to go, she says, and they still wrote. Because that's the entire function of the rule, and she'd tell you so herself. The postcard is proof of thinking of home from the farthest point away from it you'll ever happily be. It's the first document of the marriage, the first thing the 2 of you produce together with a stamp on it. and it teaches the couple in their first married week the lesson this whole family runs on. Wherever you go, you report back. The wall isn't a collection. It's a roll call. Everyone came back, everyone wrote. My favourite detail took me 30 years to notice, and Grandma had to point it out. Every postcard on that wall is pinned picture side out. Beaches, falls, mountains, except one, hers. Niagara, 1962, is pinned WR writing side out, her own young handwriting facing the kitchen, and you can lean in and read what she wrote to her mother from the far. Side of her own beginning, dear Mama, it's louder than they say, so am I now, home Sunday, home Sunday. 62 years on the wall, and she taps it every time she passes with the dish towel, twice, like knocking on a door she already lives behind. That story ends there. One book of stamps per wedding, one wall of proof, and a rule that costs $1 and lasts 60 years. You know what she wants. Send the postcard, home Sunday. That's the whole message, and it's always been enough. Speaking of things waiting to be opened, our next story, our second to last of the night, is about the envelope Grandma gives every couple and when they're allowed to open it. At every family wedding, somewhere in the quiet part of the evening, Grandma gives the couple a small sealed envelope, cream-coloured, their names on the front, in her handwriting. And on the back, where the seal is, the same instruction every time, underlined once, open after your first real fight. Not if, after. That's the first gift inside the gift. An 80-year-old woman telling you on your happiest night, in handwriting steadier than her hands, that the fight is coming and that it's ordinary. Couples report the same arc with the envelope. First it goes somewhere careful, a sock drawer, a keepsake box. Then it gets forgotten, mostly the way a smoke detector is forgotten. And then, some night, 8 weeks in or 8 months, over money or family or nothing, the first real one, the one with silence after it, someone remembers. The envelope. My sister says she and her husband were in separate rooms, not speaking, when he appeared in the doorway holding it like a white flag and said, "I believe. We've unlocked this." What's inside? Every couple gets the same thing, and no couple has ever spoiled it for the next, which tells you everything about how it lands. But my sister showed me hers eventually, and I can tell you, it's short. A single card. It says, "Good. You're not polite anymore. Now the marriage can start. Come to dinner Sunday. Don't tell me who was right. I don't care. Love, Grandma." And folded inside the card, $2. For 2 coffees, the card explains. Take them outside. Argue kinder out there. They went for the coffees. Everyone goes for the coffees. It is apparently impossible not to. You're standing in your kitchen mid-fight holding $2 from your grandmother, and the fight just cannot survive it. The silence breaks. Someone laughs first. And Sunday dinner happens, and Grandma asks nothing, exactly as promised, just feeds them and lets them be a couple who had a fight and came to dinner anyway. Which, she'd tell you, is the entire recipe. There isn't another one. 30-some envelopes issued over the decades. And here's the accounting that finishes this story. At her 90th birthday, the family did a quiet survey and found that every single couple still has the card. The envelopes, the $2, long gone, spent on the coffees as directed. But the cards survive in wallets and mirror frames and bedside drawers across 4 states, decades of them. The same 14 words doing their work in 30. Houses, you're not polite anymore. Now the marriage can start. That story's over. One envelope, $2, 14 words, and a fight that every marriage was going to have anyway, converted by mail into coffee and Sunday dinner. She never tells anyone who was right. She genuinely doesn't care. That's the gift. And for our last story tonight, the 32nd, we come to the album premiere and the empty slot on Grandma's shelf. Every wedding in this family ends twice. Once at the reception, and once about 3 months later at Grandma's house on a Sunday afternoon when the album arrives. The album premiere is a real event with real customs. The couple brings the finished wedding album, the physical one. This family took the digitization argument to committee years ago, and the committee was. Grandma and the ruling was screens don't sit on laps, and the family gathers on the good couches, and the album is open for the first time, IN company. Never alone first. That's the rule the couples find hardest and defend most fiercely afterward. You do not peek. The first time you see your wedding album, everyone you love is looking over your shoulder, narrating, gasping, finding themselves in backgrounds, telling you what was happening just outside each frame. The album gets seen once by everyone at the same time, the way the wedding itself was. After that, it's just photos. The premiere is the last event off the wedding. There are white gloves. I should mention the white gloves. A box of them, cotton, kept in the sideboard, distributed by Grandma to anyone who will be turning pages. Are they necessary? No. Photographic paper survives fingers. But the gloves do something better than protect the pages. They announce that what's in your hands matters. Children at album premieres sit STRA88 in the gloves. The gloves are doing ceremony work and everyone knows it, and the box stays stocked. And then there's the shelf. In Grandma's living room, the long shelf on the west wall holds every wedding album in the family's history. 31 of them now, spines out, in chronological order, from her own parents' slim grey album through every marriage since, is the first thing you see from the front door. It is, functionally, the family's spine. You can run a finger down it and touch every beginning. And here is the detail I want to leave you with tonight. Whoever you are, however awake you still are. At the end of the shelf, after the newest album, Grandma keeps a gap. A deliberate, maintained, empty slot. Bookend placed the hand's width out, holding the space. Ask her what it's for, and she gives the same answer she's given for decades, patting the empty wood like it's already warm. The next one. There's always a next one. That story ends there, and honestly, that's the one to fall asleep on. That's all, 32. The ring is in its box, the ledger is square, the tents are 16 for 16 now, and somewhere in a basement freezer, this year's top tier is 2 bags deep. And waiting for its dinner, the postcards are pinned. The envelopes are sealed and waiting in sock drawers, patient as smoke detectors. And on a shelf on a west wall, a bookend sits a hand's width out, holding a space. If you're still awake, thank you for staying up with me again, truly. These take a while to tell, and it's good company knowing you're out there. And if you're not awake, if you slipped away somewhere between the cake panel and the handkerchiefs, or you never made it past the save the dates, that's not a failure of listening. That's the whole arrangement working. The house has got the place. Nothing needs you right now. Whatever's on your list for tomorrow, it will keep until tomorrow. The stories will keep too. Families always do. That's the one thing every story tonight was actually about, underneath the tents and the toasters. Things kept. People kept. So, sleep well. Take care of yourself and be patient with your own funny little rules. Somebody someday is going to tell stories about them gently at 2 in the morning to people who needed help sleeping. I'll see you at the next one. There's always a next one. Good night.